I used to think the silence in my family was normal. The awkward pauses. The way everyone tensed up when certain names were mentioned. The forced smiles during holidays. The fact that I couldn't name a single thing about my grandfather, what he looked like, what he loved, how he died. It was like he never existed. But grief is funny. It doesn't just show up when someone dies. Sometimes it comes years later, when the truth does. And my truth started unraveling the day we buried my grandmother. Before I get into what happened, can I ask you something? Have you ever had that moment when everything feels off? Like a scene in your life doesn't quite fit the script you've been handed? That was me, standing at the edge of my grandmother's grave, knowing deep down that something wasn't right, and hadn't been for a very long time. And hey, if stories like these pull at something in you, or if you've ever felt like your family was hiding something too, I share stories like this every week. So hit that subscribe button, join me, and let's figure these things out together. Now back to that day. The funeral. The weather was cold and brittle. A sharp wind carried dust across the headstones like whispers. My mother clutched my arm tighter than necessary, her fingers digging into my coat sleeve. I could feel her tension vibrating through me like a tuning fork. "You don't need to stay for the reading of the will," she whispered to me after the service. I frowned. Why not? She just shook her head. "It's just formalities." But something in her voice cracked. And I remembered how my grandmother looked at me the last time I saw her, like she wanted to say something but was scared she'd waited too long. So I stayed. The lawyer was a mild-looking man with silver-framed glasses and a dusty briefcase. He read through the usual things. Jewelry to so-and-so, her savings split between her children, her house to my Uncle Richard. Then he paused. And finally, he said, flipping to the last page, a letter addressed to Allison Marin, her granddaughter. All eyes turned to me. Even my mother flinched. I took the envelope with trembling hands. It was sealed with wax. Back at home, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it for what felt like hours. Finally, I broke the seal. The handwriting was elegant and slow, like each word was chosen with the weight of years. My sweet girl, if you're reading this, then I've gone to wherever souls like mine go, hopefully not somewhere too loud. You always knew I hated noise. But there's something I need to tell you. Something no one else ever will. You deserve to know who you are, not the version your mother told you, but the truth. And it starts with a man named Samuel. Ask your Aunt Claire. She knows. I wanted to tell you myself. I just didn't know how. I was afraid. But I love you. I always have. And I hope one day you'll forgive us all for the silence. Love always. Grandma Eloise. The letter dropped to my lap. Samuel? Claire? I knew an Aunt Claire, but she wasn't technically my aunt, more like my mom's distant cousin. I hadn't seen her in 10 years. And Samuel? That name sent a ripple through me. Like I had heard it before, but couldn't place it. A name caught in the cobwebs of childhood. I knew in that moment that my family had lied to me about something fundamental, and that my grandmother had spent her final breath trying to set it right. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. Because this wasn't just about a name. It was about who I really was, and what they'd spent a lifetime trying to keep from me. Chapter 2. The Whisper in the Will. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandmother's face, not as she looked in the casket, but how she looked the last time she held my hand in her garden. Her lips parted, trembling, as if the truth sat on her tongue, and she swallowed it. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I found Claire's last known address in a forgotten Christmas card tucked in an old photo album. She lived 3 hours away, somewhere in a rural town I had no memory of. I packed a bag, left a vague voicemail for work, and drove. The house was small but warm. Wind chimes danced above the porch. Claire opened the door before I could knock. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Allison," she said softly. I was wondering how long it would take. That chilled me. "So you knew?" She stepped aside and motioned me in. The living room smelled like jasmine and old wood. Pictures lined the mantel, but not one photo included my mother. Claire poured tea, sat across from me, and with trembling fingers, handed me a shoebox. Inside were old letters, photos, and a yellowed birth certificate. My name, my birth date, but under father. A name I'd never heard, Samuel E. Walsh. Who is this? I asked, my throat dry. Claire's eyes were full of sorrow. He was your mother's first love. Your real father. They were young, it was complicated. But your mother never forgave him for leaving. She told everyone you were someone else's. I couldn't breathe. Claire placed a photo in my hands. A man with deep brown eyes. My eyes. Standing next to a smiling Eloise. Your grandmother kept this truth, she whispered, because she was trying to protect you. But I always thought it was a mistake. My hands trembled. Claire added, there's more. Samuel, he tried to find you. For years. I felt the floor tilt. The stories I'd been told were unraveling fast, and the version of myself I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers. What happened to him? I asked. Claire hesitated, then quietly said, he died 6 months ago. A gut punch. I had a father I never knew, and he was gone before I could even say his name aloud. But then she handed me a USB stick. He left this with me, just in case you ever came. The truth wasn't just buried. It was recorded, and I was about to hear it in his own voice. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing her handwriting. That familiar, elegant script, looping and careful, like she was whispering to me from the grave. I must have read the letter a dozen times. Each time, the name Samuel hit me like a stone to the chest. Who was he? And why did my grandmother say no one else would tell me about him? The next morning, I sat in my childhood bedroom surrounded by boxes of memories I thought I'd buried for good. I tore through photo albums, birthday cards, old report cards, anything that might give me a clue. That's when I found it. A Christmas card from 10 years ago, buried in a crumpled envelope addressed from Claire. Aunt Claire. She wasn't really my aunt. Technically, she was my mom's cousin. But she used to visit every now and then when I was little. Then suddenly, she disappeared from our lives. I always thought it was just one of those family drifted apart things. Now I wasn't so sure. There was an address on the back of the envelope, still barely legible. Without giving myself time to overthink it, I packed a bag, left a note for my roommate, and hit the road. Claire lived 3 hours away in a quiet town I barely remembered. Her house was a little white cottage tucked behind a line of maple trees, wind chimes clinking softly on the porch. I hadn't even knocked when the door opened. Allison, she said like she'd been expecting me. Come in. Her voice was softer than I remembered, but her eyes, they held something sharp, like she knew this day would come. The inside of her home smelled like jasmine and warm bread. The living room was lined with old books, faded portraits, and a quilt draped over the arm of a rocking chair. She sat me down, poured tea, and didn't waste a second. You got Eloise's letter, she said. I nodded. She mentioned someone named Samuel. And you. Claire didn't blink. She reached under the coffee table and pulled out an old shoebox. Your grandmother told me to hold on to this in case you ever came. Inside were old black and white photos, yellowed letters, and a birth certificate. My birth certificate. At first, it looked the same as the one I'd always known until I saw the name under father. Samuel E. Walsh. I stared at it, confused. I don't understand. My dad is Michael Brantley. Claire shook her head slowly. Michael married your mother when you were a baby, but he wasn't your father. Not biologically. Your mother didn't want anyone to know. She told everyone Samuel abandoned her, but that's not what happened. I blinked back, shock. So, my mom lied? Claire reached into the box again and pulled out a photo. A man, tall, dark hair, kind eyes, was holding a toddler with curly hair and dimples. The caption read, Sam and Allie, 1997. That was me. I felt the room spin. I met him. Claire's voice was gentle. You were little. She told you he was a friend from the park. He tried to stay involved. But every time he got close, your mother pushed him away. Why? I whispered. Why would she do that?
Claire looked pained.
Because Samuel left her.
Not you.
She never forgave him for breaking her heart. And she couldn't bear to let him be the hero in your story. I sat frozen. For years I thought my father had been distant. But now it turned out the man I called Dad had known the truth all along and said nothing.
And Samuel?
He'd been erased. There's more, Claire said. She handed me a USB stick. He recorded this the year he died. He left it with me, just in case you ever wanted the truth. I clutched it in my hand, my fingers shaking. Is he gone? Claire nodded. Passed away 6 months ago. Liver cancer. My stomach sank. I had a father. A real father. And he died without me knowing who he was. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or cry or rewind time.
Claire placed a hand over mine.
He asked about you every time we spoke.
He followed your art shows online.
He kept everything. And just like that, the walls I'd built inside me started to crumble. The truth had been buried for nearly 3 decades. Now I had it in my hands. And I knew what I had to do next. I was going to watch that video. Then I was going to confront my mother. Because silence had stolen too much already. The moment Claire handed me that USB stick, my hands went cold. I stared at it, a simple piece of plastic. But I knew it held something more than a message. It held the voice of a man I'd spent my whole life unknowingly missing. Claire watched me like she was afraid I might fall apart right there. I haven't listened to it, she said gently. I didn't think it was my place. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My chest felt tight. My ears rang. I didn't wait to get home. I plugged it into Claire's old laptop, which buzzed and clicked like it hadn't been used in years. A single file popped up. For Allison, if you ever find mead, MP3. I clicked play. And then I heard him. Hi. I guess if you're listening, then Claire gave you this. That means you found her. Or maybe she found you.
His voice was calm.
Gentle. The kind of voice you don't expect from the ghost of someone you've never met, but somehow already miss. I don't know what your mother told you. I can only imagine. But Allison, you're my daughter. A sob clawed at my throat. I was 19 when you were born. Your mother and I, we were stupid and stubborn and in love. But when I left for college out of state, she shut me out. Wouldn't return my calls. Wouldn't let me come back. Her family helped. Covered everything up. I didn't even know you'd been born until a year later. He paused. I could hear him trying to hold it together. I tried to fight it. I really did. I hired lawyers. I even came back once, but your grandmother, Eloise, begged me not to destroy the family peace. Said you were being raised well. Said you didn't need the drama. And maybe I was a coward. I backed off. The next silence was long. I regret it every day. But I always hoped maybe someday you'd find me. Maybe someday we'd sit and talk. I don't know what kind of woman you've become, but I bet you're fierce. Smart. Just like your mother. And maybe if I got lucky, a little like me. I was sobbing now, silent and shaking. Claire sat beside me, a tissue box already in hand. I kept everything. Photos, letters. I'll ask Claire to hold on to them. If you ever want to know more, I'm sorry I won't be there to tell you. A deep breath on the recording. But no matter what anyone said, Allison, I wanted you. I loved you. I always will. Click. Silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't fill a room. It hollows it. I sat there, empty, a crater of emotions where my heart should have been. Claire placed a hand on mine.
There's more, she said.
He left you a letter too. But I didn't want the letter yet. I wanted answers. And there was only one person who had them. My mother. When I showed up at her house unannounced, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Allison, what are you? Don't, I said. Not until I say this. I walked right past her into the kitchen, the same kitchen where she used to braid my hair before school, where she told me fairy tales while stirring soup. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. She was silent. Why did you lie? Why did you tell me someone else was my father? Still nothing. So I pushed harder. Why did you erase a man who tried to be in my life? Why did you let me grow up thinking I was unwanted when the truth was sitting in a shoebox in Claire's living room? Finally, she broke. I was trying to protect you, she snapped. From disappointment. From being abandoned, like I was. My laugh was bitter. He didn't abandon me. You shut him out. Her jaw tightened. He left me. He left this town. I was pregnant and alone. And no one, not him, not his family, lifted a finger to help. I took a step forward. And so your solution was to rewrite my life? To make me believe in a father who never existed? To bury the truth with lies? Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not yet. You have no idea what it's like, she whispered. Raising a child with that kind of betrayal sitting in your bones. No, I said. But I know what it's like growing up with a hole in your chest and being told it was normal. She covered her face. I hated myself for so long, I said, softer now. I thought I was hard to love, but it turns out I just never had the truth. Her shoulders sagged. She didn't apologize. She couldn't. That night, I stayed at a motel. I didn't want to be in that house anymore. Claire called. There's something else, she said. I wasn't going to say anything, but I think you should know. Your grandmother didn't want this secret to die with her. She left something in the attic, in her house. What is it? She said it would explain everything. But she made me promise I'd let you find it on your own. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I drove back to my grandmother's old cottage. The house was locked, but I still had the spare key she used to hide in the flower pot. Dust danced in the air like ash. I made my way to the attic. The door groaned open. Inside, a single box. Inside the box, journals. Dozens of them. All labeled. And one, marked in red ink. For Allison when you're ready. The attic was cold, even in daylight. Dust filtered through the sunlight like old memories refusing to settle. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, the box of journals between my knees, my hands shaking. The one marked in red, for Allison when you're ready, was heavier than the others. Like it knew it carried more than ink and paper. It carried weight. It carried truth. I opened it. The first page was written in the same slanted script from the letter my grandmother had left me. If you're reading this, sweetheart, then I'm gone. And if you've come this far, it means the truth has already started to crack through the walls they built around you. I never wanted to keep this from you. But I was afraid. Your mother, she made it very clear that the past was not to be disturbed. That Samuel was not to be mentioned. That you were to grow up believing her version of the world. And I let her do it. I helped. I carried the lie with her. And for that, I am so sorry. My throat tightened. But the lie didn't start with her. It started with the man you called Dad. I froze. That man. The one whose last name I bore. The one whose birthday I never forgot, even though he barely spoke to me. Who gave me hand-me-down advice and hand-me-down affection. Who taught me how to parallel park, but never once said he was proud of me. I kept reading. He knew you weren't his. From the beginning. Your mother told him after you were born, and he agreed to raise you. Under one condition. A condition that still makes me sick. He demanded that Samuel be cut off completely. No contact. No letters. No name. He agreed to stay, to provide, to wear the mask of a family man as long as the truth was buried. He wasn't a father. He was a gatekeeper to your identity. And your mother agreed. I stopped reading. Everything blurred. The birthday cards I made by hand. The awkward silences at dinner. The way he called me kid instead of sweetheart or baby girl. It all made sense now. He tolerated me. Like an obligation. Like a deal he never wanted but couldn't escape. He was never my father. And the one who was never allowed to know me. The betrayal wasn't a single wound. It was 1,000 little paper cuts, all bleeding at once. I flipped through more pages. My grandmother had documented it all. The fights, the letters from Samuel that she'd hidden to keep the peace. The day she found my mother burning one of those letters in the sink. And then one page that hit like a gut punch. A photo, taped to the journal. It was me, at about 6 years old, sitting on Samuel's lap in a park I didn't recognize. I stared at it. The date scribbled on the back said, Spring, 2002. I did meet him. I met my real father. And someone had erased that memory from me completely. I called Claire. Did I ever meet Samuel? I asked. She was quiet. Yes, she finally said. Once. You were 6. It was after your mother had a breakdown and left you with Eloise for the summer. Samuel visited town. Eloise arranged for you two to spend the day together. It was the happiest I'd ever seen him. Why don't I remember? Because your mom made sure you wouldn't. She threw out every photo, burned letters, told you it was a distant uncle. She even told you he scared you. She made you forget. I sat in silence, shaking. Claire whispered, You loved him. You called him Sammy. That broke me. That night, I drank tea and read every word of those journals. Each chapter painted a fuller picture of how deep the manipulation ran. But one entry, dated just a few years ago, made my blood run cold. Your father, Samuel, tried to get in touch again. After decades of silence, he found me, told me he was sick. He had cancer, and he wanted to see you. Just once. I told your mother. I begged her. I said it might be his dying wish. She said, I hope he dies with that wish. I dropped the journal. My own mother. She didn't just lie. She robbed both of us of something sacred. A chance to heal. A final goodbye. A father's last look at his child. And she did it out of pride. Or spite. Or pain so deep it turned cruel. Whatever the reason, she'd gone too far. And for the first time in my life, I realized something bone deep. She didn't deserve to hold the pen to my story anymore. I knew what I had to do. I called Claire. I want to set the record straight, I told her. Publicly. All of it. I'm done letting their version of me stand.
Claire paused.
Are you sure? This could hurt a lot of people. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Good. They should know how it feels. She told me she still had a copy of Samuel's will and something he had left behind for me, a short video message. The final piece. 2 days later, I gathered everyone. My mother, the man I used to call Dad, my aunt, my uncle, my cousins, all in my grandmother's old living room, the same place where we used to open presents under a fake Christmas tree, pretending everything was fine. I connected my laptop to the old TV, inserted the USB. My hands were steady. The video began. And there he was, Samuel Walsh, older than the photo, but unmistakable. My eyes, my smile, my voice. If you're seeing this, he said, then Claire did what I asked. He looked straight into the camera. Into me. Allison, I don't know who you grew up believing you were, but I need you to hear this. You were loved. Even when they kept me from you, I never stopped thinking about you. You are more than the silence they wrapped you in. He took a breath. And to the rest of you watching this, yes, I mean you, Carol, he looked straight into the lens, calling out my mother's name. You may think you did what was best, but what you really did was steal something precious. You don't get to rewrite her history anymore. The room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Except me. I exhaled for the first time in years. When the screen went black, the silence in the room was deafening. No one dared look at each other. Not my mother. Not the man I once called Dad. Not my aunt or cousins, who had always treated me like a broken branch on the family tree, something strange they didn't want to touch. But me? I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Samuel's words still echoed in the room like a warning bell no one could unhear. You don't get to rewrite her history anymore. My mother's hand trembled in her lap. Her face had drained of all color. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her mouth twitched like she wanted to explain herself. But I wasn't done. I stood up, pulled out the journal, and began reading aloud. He wasn't a father. He was a gatekeeper to your identity. Every line stung. Every truth made someone flinch. I turned to face them all. You knew, I said, my voice clear. You all knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough.
And you stayed quiet.
My Uncle Richard had the decency to look ashamed. My cousin Tara wouldn't meet my eyes. But my mother, she finally spoke. Allison, you don't understand what it was like. I held up a hand.
No.
You don't get to play victim. Not here. Not after this. The man I had called Dad for 28 years shifted uncomfortably. He looked at me, and for once, without the mask of polite indifference. I didn't hate you, he said slowly. But you weren't mine. And I never asked for this. I nodded. That much was clear my entire life. He flinched. My mother stared at him like she'd just realized something for the first time, like maybe he was part of the rot, too. Maybe she wasn't just a villain. Maybe she was a prisoner in her own house of lies. But that wasn't my burden to carry. I turned to the rest of the room. For years, I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. Turns out I was just lied to. Constantly.
Strategically.
And for what? To protect your secrets? Your shame? I pulled out a photo from the journal, 6-year-old me in Samuel's lap. I met him, I said, my voice shaking. I spent a whole day with him. But you stole that memory from me. You told me he scared me. That he wasn't safe. I looked straight at my mother. Do you even remember what you said to me that night? She blinked, tears finally threatening. I asked who he was. I continued. You told me he was a sad man who liked to pretend. You made me afraid of the truth. Of him. And worse, of myself. Now she was crying. But I didn't stop. You told a 6-year-old girl that love was dangerous. That family was fiction. And for what? So no one would know you weren't perfect. She shook her head. I didn't want to lose you. You never had me, I said.
You only had a version of me.
The one you controlled. And just like that, her tears dried. Her expression hardened. The cold mask I'd grown up with slid back into place. If you came here to destroy me, she said, congratulations. You've done it. I smiled, bitter and soft.
No, Mom.
I didn't come to destroy you. I came to free myself. After that, I left. Not another word. I packed up the journals, the USB, and the photo box Claire had saved. And I walked out of that house, that mausoleum of secrets, for the last time. I didn't even look back. 3 days later, I made the truth public. I shared Samuel's story with his family, who had long believed he never had children. I posted a tribute to him online, a short video with photos, his voice, and a caption that read, My father never got to know me, but he loved me.
And I know that now.
This is for him, and for every truth that was buried too deep. It went viral. Strangers messaged me, some with condolences, some with stories of their own, of lies, betrayals, secrets swept under generations of silence. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Then came the letter from the lawyer. Samuel's estate had left something in my name. A small beach cottage, tucked away along the coast where he'd spent his last years. He had no spouse, no other children, just a hope that someday I'd find him and a life he'd quietly prepared for us. The deed had been sitting with Claire all along. I cried for hours. I drove there the next weekend. It was peaceful. Crashing waves. Wine through the dune grass. A little wooden sign on the porch that read, Home at last. Inside, photos of me. As a child. As a teen. Ones he must have gotten through Claire, or maybe even from a distance. He'd followed my life. Loved me from afar. And this home, was his final gift. And that was when I made a decision. I didn't just want to escape my family shadow. I wanted to rewrite it. I published a memoir. Raw, honest, ugly, and beautiful. Buried names. The truth my family tried to kill. It made waves. Not because I was anyone famous, but because too many people knew that kind of silence. And somewhere in the acknowledgments, I wrote, To Samuel Walsh, thank you for giving me a name no one could erase. The waves crashed just beyond the window as I sipped my coffee and looked out over the beach my father had once walked. It was strange to think that I used to believe I didn't belong to anyone. That I was just floating through life, unanchored, unclaimed. Now I knew the truth. Samuel Walsh had always wanted me, had always loved me, and even in death, he had given me what no one else had: a place, a name, and the courage to reclaim my own story. But closure doesn't come easily, not when your entire identity has been forged in someone else's fire. I had told the truth.
Publicly. Boldly.
Loud enough that my mother couldn't ignore it. Loud enough that her friends stopped whispering when I entered the room and started asking her questions instead. But I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks after the memoir was released, I got a call from a podcast host, a woman named Maren Ellis, who ran a show about family secrets and generational healing. She'd read my book, and she wanted to feature me in a special series. "Your story," she said, "isn't just heartbreaking, it's necessary." I hesitated at first. I wasn't sure I wanted to bleed in front of another audience. But something in her voice and knowing, soft authority, made me say yes. When the episode aired, something strange happened. People began writing to me. Not just with support, but with questions.
Please.
Dozens of women and men saying they suspected their own families were hiding things too. Asking how I'd known. How I'd found the strength to confront it. What they should do. Some of them even shared similar betrayals. One message stayed with me. My mother told me my father died in a car crash before I was born. I found out last week he's alive and lives 2 towns over. I never would have looked if I hadn't heard your story. Suddenly, the pain I had carried became a bridge. And for the first time in my life, I realized something incredible. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to others too. People who needed to know they weren't crazy for feeling like something was missing. People like me. I knew it was time to change my name. Not legally, not yet. But emotionally. Spiritually. The surname I'd carried for 28 years had come from a man who looked through me like I was glass. A man who agreed to raise a child on the condition that her real father be erased. But I wasn't erased anymore. I emailed the podcast host with a request. For the next airing, could she introduce me differently? Not Allison Brantley. Allison Walsh. She wrote back within the hour. Absolutely. When the next episode began, and I heard my real name spoken aloud, into a microphone, into the world, I cried. The good kind of cry. The full-body release kind. The kind you don't even realize you've been holding back for years. I didn't speak to my mother again. Not after the family meeting. Not after the memoir. Not even after I mailed her a signed copy with a note inside that said, "You had 28 years to tell the truth." I only needed 6 chapters. She never responded. But I heard through Claire that she'd been ostracized by a few longtime friends. That her reputation in the community, carefully curated, fiercely protected, had taken a hit. That wasn't my goal. But I didn't lose sleep over it either. Let the silence she buried me in return the favor. Months passed. Life became quieter, but not emptier. I found work I actually cared about, helping others write their stories, confront the uncomfortable, seek closure. I started volunteering at a center for foster teens, kids who had never known the truth of where they came from. I saw myself in them. And one summer afternoon, as I stood outside the cottage Samuel left me, I watched as a group of them helped paint a mural on the side wall. A celebration of identity, of found family, of freedom. In bold letters they painted, "The truth sets us free." And beneath it my name, Allison Walsh. One evening, while sorting through boxes, I found a sealed envelope I had missed before. Inside, a handwritten note in my grandmother's looping cursive. "Sweet girl, if this letter finds you after everything, then you've done what I never could. You told the truth. You broke the cycle. You found yourself. That's more than I ever hoped for. Wherever I am, know I'm proud of you. You have always been more than they told you. Don't let them define what comes next. Love, always, Grandma Eloise." I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, "I forgive you."
And I meant it.
Not because she deserved it, but because I needed it. The final twist came 6 months later. A lawyer contacted me about a trust fund, one my father had set up with Claire's help. It was small, but enough to fund a scholarship program in his name. A scholarship for young people raised in secrecy, in shame, in silence. We named it the Samuel Walsh Legacy Grant. And on the day of its launch, I stood at the podium, in the coastal town my father had lived in, and looked out at a crowd full of strangers who had become family through shared truth. I used to believe I was unwanted, I said. But that was someone else's lie. My father loved me, and he made sure the world knew it, even if he never got to say it in person. The applause thundered, but it was the quiet afterward that I cherished most, because I no longer feared the silence. I had walked through it, named it, and come out the other side. So now, when people ask me what happened, how I found the truth, how I confronted the past, I say this. I stopped asking for answers, and I started demanding them. And when they ask if I ever regretted going public, I smile and say,
No.
because sometimes revenge doesn't look like vengeance. It looks like truth. And nothing is more powerful than that.
The end.